I guess it's time. You grow around good values and morals and discipline, and that has been the motivation to do this, to be this relentless, obsessive, crazy freak that I am on just tunnel visioning on stuff. That was it. So the more you learn about people, the better you can actually create experiences. You can tunnel vision and focus, compartmentalize something to really get to the end of it. And you really had to just be, enough that you kind of stick out the trouble, stay away from the trouble.
Welcome to the Wealthy Minority Podcast. Today, I've got a really, really exciting guest. It's an old friend of mine. We've worked together. I've coached him as a football player, and I'm really, really looking forward to getting into his head and really understanding how he's got to where he has, because he's doing amazing in the corporate world. So, welcome, Mr. Mabs.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, how you doing, man? So, firstly, let's start with Mabs as a child. So, look, Mabs, first, before we do that, actually, let's just tell our viewers what you do. You work in UX product design.
Yes.
What does that even mean?
So I'm European Manager of Product Design. I work for a global telecoms business, and I am responsible for effectively getting enterprises and global conglomerates onto our global network platform. The company's called Console Connect. Been there for about a year and a half. But what is product design? Product design is effectively how the psychology of how people use interactive products. So like apps, websites, whether it's email, whatever. Like, you got to realize how when you have buttons on screen, when you have things you got to do, someone's else had to think about it and the human psyche of it. So it's effectively doing that, and there's a science to it, and I enjoy that very much.
So you're responsible for all of the people when they get addicted to their screens and they're just...
Well, look, that's part of it. Addiction is a key part of it, and you know what? It's capturing the way people use devices and the human aspect of it and digitizing it. So the more you learn about people, the better you can actually create experiences.
Fascinating. We're going to delve more into that and how you got to that, and actually, what does the future mean for UX design, development, all of that kind of stuff, and also what the future means for you. So let's start with Mabs as a child.
Oh, man.
So were you always from Bristol?
Yes.
Yeah?
Always.
So local Bristol lads. I know that actually because I know your family and I know your dad. So
you go way back. Come on, let's not
sugarcoat it. We family friends. But obviously, I actually didn't know you. I knew your dad. Yeah, from back in the day, from Family Connections. But growing up, Mabs, what were you like as a child? What were you into?
Yeah, no, do you know what? That's interesting. So kind of, I guess a bit of background is I got 4 other siblings, got 4 older sisters, youngest child, and I was the nerdy, curious kind of kid, really. When I grew up in Easton, the ghetto of Easton, went down, primary school, close to where we are. And I guess where we grew up, man, it's you grew up in a kind of rough part of town in a sense. Everyone's kind of doing everyone's quite similar. It's like a council estate or whatever. And you really had to just be, enough that you kind of stick out the trouble, stay away from the trouble. But I guess young Mabs is, you grow up with 4 older sisters, and for me, it's how do I get away from them? So I guess quite nicely, I had a great group of friends growing up, which was, it's just kept me in straight now.
So normally, and this is being very stereotypical, the youngest is, especially when you've got older sisters. Yeah. I'm not talking from experience, obviously.
Yes, you are.
Damn it. This is going to be an awkward conversation, man.
You're going to see yourself. You're going to see a lot of yourself in this.
No. This isn't about me today. This is about you. But growing up with older siblings, sisters, that would have mothered you as well as your mum. You didn't turn out like that, bro. You didn't turn out. You didn't, knowing you, well, you didn't turn out spoiled. You didn't turn out unappreciated. In fact, it's the complete opposite. The man I see is someone who takes care of their shit and someone who is responsible. There's all this stuff about Andrew Tate being toxic masculinity and blah, blah, blah. But if I use the word masculine, I don't mean it in a toxic way. I just want to put that out there. But for me, that's what being a responsible man is, and that's a masculine one. You take care of your stuff, you take care of your family, you take care of your nieces, and obviously your nuclear family as well. And you're responsible for your parents. You live with your parents, right?
That's right.
What got you to be like that and not go the other way and becoming a spoiled little brat?
You know what? That's a deep question. So look, I guess it's kind of the background. We grew up dad had a restaurant. We had enough for what we wanted, but you couldn't, it's not like, oh, get whatever you want in the shop. Is like, that kind of thing. So you grew up with kind of really hard boundaries. As well as that, you're the youngest. Now, I ain't gonna lie, I was spoiled. My dad, whenever we were younger, I used to be always tailing him. And whenever we go out, there used to be at least a 10, 20 quid, toys you spend on whatever. And dad would just, he would spoil me because I'm the youngest and the boy. Why it didn't turn out that way? Do you know what? I guess it's time. You grow around good values and morals and discipline, and it takes that upon. And I guess we'll touch upon it a bit later on, which is there's a moment of your life when you're really young, and you don't know you don't know anything. You just know what you know. You're in the household, and credit to my mom and dad. They, dad being typical Asian, dad in that sense. He's strict where he needs to be, but kind of flexible where he also needs to be. But mom was also really caring. But because I guess when we were around, like when my sisters and everyone took care of us and me, like. You used to see that discipline kind of see them. So you kind of put those boundaries in. But I guess I think what maybe got me kind of part of me really is when you have 4 sisters, you kind of see now say, okay, yeah, as you grow up and they get married and relationships and whatever else, you kind of have it in me to say, look, I want to do something that I want someone that I want someone else to do my sisters. And I guess that kind of ingrained in me in my empathy, in how I feel and how I approach. But another angle of it is actually I also wanted to be me. I wanted to just be me in the sense of it's not you always looked at, oh, he's the younger one, he could do, he can get away with it. No, actually, no. I want to stand on my own 2 feet and become myself, because you also think that the young one's always the dependent one. He's always depending on everyone. But as you grow older, you're like, no, do you know what? You get that competitiveness that everyone's doing, but academically, and so you kind of go down your own path. And for me, it was no, I want to become something myself. And I guess that's a part of it. It's a really complex question because there's so many facets to it. But for me, I felt like I wanted to just stand on my own 2 feet, and dad. Asian guy mentality, really. Like, he becomes the sole great, he becomes the voice of the house and the breadwinner, and you're always kind of having this battle between dad wants to do this and I want to do that, and that part of me saying, no, you know what, I guess it's that part of actually having that satisfaction to say, you know what, he's actually done pretty well for himself, and that is, I take that in, whether it's a comment or something along the way, but for me, it's taking that in all part of my life, and I guess is kind of part of my DNA.
So there's a period in your life where there's a push and pull, and I can talk about that from experience. Obviously, my dad passed away when I was younger, so only up to a certain age. But you see the world differently to dad, right? But there was a point where you respected him for it. Not that you didn't respect him, but you appreciated. Let's say not respect. Maybe you appreciated what he was bringing to the table. And actually his old school way, let's say, of doing things, because that put food on the table, that put a roof over your head. When was that?
Well, do you know what? I think that's not even that side of it. The other side of it is like when you become I was really thankful in the sense that my dad, we've always had a business, and dad was always, had his restaurant, and, we weren't well off, but we were good enough. Do you know what I mean? Like if we needed things, dad would provide, and that was fantastic. So in that stance, we was that. But then, on the other end of it, I'd always hear these comments to say, "Oh, you're minted. Your dad was you. You're the only son. You're minted." And that was the driver. We're like, no, we're not minted. We have got our own challenges, and that's behind closed doors that no one sees. So really, it's that aspect of you hear all these comments when you're growing up, and I guess it's all these indirect comments as well in the community, and family. You hear, okay, that's to take care of him, and that was the driver. So no, actually, I don't want that to be what I don't want to delve in my dad's successes and what he's had. I want to do something of my own, which kind of led me to be a bit of an outlier in my family in the sense of going in a direction that no one really knew of.
Yeah, because you growing up, if someone said, "Oh, what does Mabs do?" "Oh, he's in IT." That was the
computer engineer. What does your son do? He's computer engineer. No, Dad, I'm not. I'm not even close to that.
Yeah, it's because it's just so, I don't know, different, right? Obviously, I think most people in the corporate sector would understand what a UX person does broadly, but to someone who understands doctor, engineer, accountant, what are the other ones? IT manager or something like that. That's probably what people understand. So that's...
Well, do you know what? You're saying it as if I actually knew what I wanted to do. I had no idea what I wanted to do. What I liked was being obsessive about tinkering. I think we were talking earlier about someone, like, I was always a tinkerer. I was the type that will... Like, I'll have toys, but then I'll have stuff that I'll get I'll see Dad and, because whip out his screwdriver set and whatnot. And I would I remember there's moments where I would just, kind of reminiscent of me, really. I remember having this old telephone, wired ones and whatnot. I would get my screwdriver out and open it all up, see how it works, then put it back all again. I'm the tinkerer type.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I was always like that.
So you had that in you.
I had that in me, yeah.
So... obviously, we know that you had a curious mind and you wanted to, one of the evidence of that is you break things apart and then put it back together. And I get that. That took you through you went through primary school, you went into secondary school. How was that for you? Where did you go? Where did you go secondary school? Was it a local one?
Local one. We went to the same, me, the family, my sister, we all went to the same secondary school. Back then it was called St. George City Academy, which we got rebranded afterwards. For the simple fact that the rest of the sisters went there and I went there as well, and it was just the easiest one. Like, I guess when we were younger, and kind of our backgrounds really it was less about what was the best school you can go to, is what was the most, what made sense in terms of how far it is and how it can drop you off.
Locality, isn't it?
Exactly.
And convenience, because obviously parents are working so hard. So how was school for you? What you like at school? Oh
man, look, being completely transparent, open, I was a big kid. I was a big kid. I was bullied in school a lot of times, and I was, you have your anxieties when you're a kid. Like, if you try to, there's one part of you try to be in the background, but then, you'd also want to get in your either stand for yourself or kind of get in the way. But you were always a fat kid. But also, in my family, it was just that we didn't have any other family around, and it was more or less of just being myself, I guess, in the space of being the fat kid in the corner who was a bit nerdy, but also tried to sit in the background, but sometimes poke my heads up on things that I knew. And kids being kids, if there's one that knows a lot, they always pick on them, and that was me.
But you were, I wouldn't say you're an introverted character. Would you say you're probably more introverted because of like being self-conscious when you were younger, and that's come out as you get older?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, in a sense, like if you were. No, I wouldn't say I'm introverted. I say,
but look, what you've described as an introverted, like,
do you know what sums it up? I think if you remember, no, this is going back another page. If you remember, we had this personality test whilst we were both working at Zealous. Yeah, and I can't remember the specifics. There were 4 quadrants, and my particular test put me where? Almost close to the middle, where it made no sense. So that kind of gives you an idea of my personality sways from all the way to introvert, all the way to extrovert, and I sway back and forth. So I'm kind of I know that I've got the way that I come out. Sometimes it's like over the top, but other days it's like super super quiet. So I sway all the way around.
It's fascinating. Like I remember us having that discussion. Like,
what do I do with it? Like,
what are you?
I don't know, what the hell am I, man?
See, mine was just like red and yellow, like heavy, like bull in a china shop with a massive team of introverts. Yeah, yeah, I hear you. It's a difficult one to define, but again, you don't want to categorize yourself and box yourself in, and that's kind of what those drive, those I think the personality tests are great, like the Myers-Briggs stuff. I always recommend doing those things, but at the same time, it's great for discovery and be like, oh yeah, this is what I'm like. When you read back, well, obviously because you put the inputs in, so you're just reading back what you put in. But I think labeling yourself is a tough one. And again, I wouldn't know whether whether it's an EN or an IN or whatever, right?
I can't remember what the business, but I just knew that it was inclusive, and I didn't really go. But coming back to your question, I guess is like, what was I like as a kid, and what was my, how was I? Look, I think as a kid, you have being the youngest, you have you have your peers and your siblings. You always competing with yourself, and like myself, I was a big kid, so you always have these anxieties. So I think that kind of is part of the shape, part of me where I have my anxieties of, okay, am I saying the right thing? Do I want to be in the forefront of stuff, or do I be in the background? And that was a big part of my life for a bit. And then as you grow older, and I guess that tinkerer mentality, you just start doing things that, just start gravitating towards things that you like. And for me, secondary school was, the first half of it was pretty bland. But then once I kind of, okay, no, you know what? I have some choices I can make, I finally I can make some choices. And then finally I realized, okay, these are the choices that I actually quite like. And these are the choices I'm not need fussed about. We all know what subject that is for each and every one of us. And I kind of got to my stride, really. And for me, it was computers, it was tinkering, it was like, things that I can just get, just let my brain just, go nuts in.
Fascinating. Like a really creative spark from an early age. But what's interesting is you recognise that early on. What about in sports? So were you involved in a lot of sports growing up?
I know where this is going. Do you know what? So when I was younger, you know what? What I'm really thankful when I was young is like, we had a tight-knit group of friends. So yes, I might have, in terms of siblings or sisters, but I had a really good, tight-knit bunch of friends. And we used to always knock for each other, play football, have a laugh, climb on the weekends or after school, climb over the fence over the school fence where we're not supposed to. And we used to play football all the time. Not so much today, but back in the days we used to. So, we was always playing. But I was that kid, I was always in goal. So,
I don't remember you being in goal, man. So when we started doing the coaching stuff, right? I was coaching team, and you've come along. I didn't remember you, man. But now I look back, I do remember, if that makes sense.
Well, there we go. That kind of.
But you're so self-conscious because I remember what you said to me. Oh yeah, I was a short, fat kid in there. That's probably why you didn't remember me. But it wasn't because you're fat or short. It was just, the presence was there. You're very quiet. But now I look back, I remember it. I just had to think about it a little bit, if that makes sense. So I would have said, yeah, you were probably, whether it's purposefully quiet and just taking it in and then spoke when you needed to speak.
Look, I was, to be honest, when that for me, it was like you go with your friends are going as well, and all the boys will go in there. You spend some time, and I used to just go because my friends will go.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, and to be honest, when you start going to these things, you kind of be a part of something, and you enjoy the success of the team. But whether or not I was good at football, I knew I was always a 2 left footer.
That didn't matter. There was
exactly. It's just been part of it,
and it's been part of it. Do you remember much about it?
A little bit. Do you know what I mean? Like for me, it's like I remember we would go. I remember one day we go in and we used to walk up to Eastwood Park all the way from Easton, a bunch of us. And I remember it used to be, we used to play up and everyone used to pick their sides. And do
you remember the training?
I remember some of the drills. It's a bit fuzzy, but I remember some of the drills.
You lot used to live for the training now. Everyone hated the training. No. Everyone looked forward to the match at the end.
We always knew who the hell is this guy? He just talks so much, man, making us do so much stuff.
See, what I did was made you did the training, and you had to implement the training in the match afterwards.
We were young, man. We were just.
It was good fun.
It was good. Yeah. It was good fun It was good. Do you know what was good though? It was good that there was something happening, bringing all some of the boys together. That was all people like us.
But you turned up.
Huh? Yeah,
people turned up. Exactly. And what I mean is nowadays I look at kids my son's age, that which is around the ages that we were, 9, probably. 10, 11. No, I'll stay home, thanks.
But that's a different time though, isn't it? Because like nowadays, kids, I've got my own kids and whatnot. They're it's so easily glued to TV. And for us, we had computer games and stuff, but nothing like it was back then. I sound proper old now.
It is, but it's because of people like you doing UX design and making them addicted to their TVs and their computers.
Luckily, I play nothing part of that. Like not yet anyway. So don't blame me.
A public PR statement, is it?
Blame Mark Zuckerberg for that. But I think when we were growing up, man, like we had what we had, and getting out of the house was actually quite normal.
That's good. So you had a good friendship circle, a good base, and that probably helped you with self-esteem. Because if you were that unconfident about yourself or your esteem, you wouldn't have come to football. Like you wouldn't have made the effort. But because everyone else was doing it, you're like, yeah, do you know what? I'm gonna go
Yeah,
as
you
well.
just go,
And you did
like
it.
it's not like exactly.
It's a thing that
You
you
go,
do.
yeah. Well, you go where your friends are going. And luckily, you know, even my friends, even the group of boys, like yeah, even you know them. We've known each other for what, easily 30 years or so, which is crazy to think, you know. But we've known each other for that long, and we're practically brothers.
It's mental, isn't it?
And yeah, and we grew up together. We play football together. We knock for each other. You know, up through the ups and downs. But
You still in touch with those friends?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit more of a smaller circle now as you grow. As you know things. Everyone's busy with their own lives, but some of the boys I still see them pretty much every week, which is awesome.
For a puff pass.
Puff puff pass.
For a
And
bit of
you
shisha, yeah?
you join the gang as well once in a while.
I wouldn't know about all of that. I don't contaminate. I don't contaminate my body like that. I, keep it.
Absolute BS.
Go for a shisha later.
Absolutely.
Yes, do it. So you went through secondary school. I was going to ask you about music production because where did that come from?
Wow. Well, you only just knew about this now.
Correct. Off camera, we talked about it, and
Off
I'm like, yo.
camera, we spoke about it.
So you thought you were a bit of a P Diddy then, was it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Do you know what? I was one of those bedroom. Look, when I was like, so we were talking about these choices. So yeah, you know what? I could start making the choices. I'm like GCSE. You know, what can I pick? And I remember, you know, I loved IT, loved computers. That was my thing. I used to, you know, I remember getting our first computer. I was all over it. You know, Windows 95 for you guys and girls who knows, you know, you can go way back then. Waiting, you know, 3 hours for the computer to load up. But then also like I was like, okay, what do I pick? What do I like? And what was quite nice is, again, going back to the family, my sister was like, oh, yeah, you do art, do this. I'm like, no, I don't want to do what you did. I want to do something different. And the question of, and I guess what got me towards that was I can do something that I quite like, which is a bit different, but actually I knew that I maybe didn't want to go down that route and, you know, for the future, but I can still do it and enjoy it, you know, and just get GCSE out of it. Pick music GCSE and realize actually I got a thing for using, you know, for these music production apps. And I was like just pressing the keyboard, MIDI keyboards and whatnot, and I just really enjoyed it.
Do you remember what software you used? Like Fruity Loops or anything like that?
Oh man, well, Fruity Loops came a bit afterwards. Let's go way back. So we used Cubase back then. And then, who was it? One of the boys. I won't name drop here.
You can name drop, man. Just name drop.
Well, he got me into.
Listen, we had Abel on the show, one of your mates, anyway, right?
Yeah. No.
And he named drop everyone, right? he went, and he just.
Well, I'll name drop it a bit later.
Man.
I'll name drop it a bit later on because that was an interesting. He's an interesting guy. But we was talking about like Sony Acid Pro, and do you know what? Like it's that curiosity mindset. You know, I guess I, you know, from a very young age, I was that type to always be curious. Like you still have all, you know, but you know, you can just tunnel vision to something and you just super focus to it.
Did you break a lot of stuff then because you were like that? Because you're just like, oh, what does this do? How does this work?
Oh, well, like I said, I'll get my screwdriver and open stuff up. But no, I was using. So in school using Cubase. Let me give you actually a prime example. I was that focus type where Ramadan. One of the years Ramadan, I think this was when I was either 15 or 16 GCSE time. The way I spent my time fasting was like, because you couldn't eat. You got to kill your time. I had to go to the music block. I'm like, yeah, I'm going on Cubase. I'm just doing my work. I just love it. Have the headphones on, bash it out. And again, the curiosity of how things work is like, okay, how are things put together? Whether there's visual or audio, and that's kind of what kind of enjoyed it. And then next thing I know, I was just doing it at home up until 3 o'clock in the morning without dad knowing. And but that was it was a way to express my creativity in a slightly different way. And you'll see that I guess we'll talk about it a bit more. Creativity is kind of part of me. How I can, whether if I'm drawing something or, you know, video something or anything that's creative is kind of part of me.
Because we work together, and we'll come on to that later on, and it's quite fascinating to see how your brain works, how you look at something. I mean, I look at it with a completely different lens, right? And it's interesting that you recognised you had it from a young age, and you fostered it.
Well, you say that like when you're young, you don't know what you don't know what you don't know. You're just doing it as you go. It's only when you're older you start saying, "Oh, do you know what? I kind of did have it in me. I did have that curiosity," and it's that. You know, one thing I say is like obsession is not a bad trait as long as it's in the right place, and you can be compulsively obsessive about something, and that can get you a long way. And I think that's one thing that stuck in me since way back. You can tunnel vision and focus, compartmentalize something to really get to the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. So you did that with your missus as well, but that worked out well, right? You got tunnel vision,
What do you
obsessed,
mean?
stalked.
Absolutely not. What are you talking about? Is
She gonna listen in on this?
Is that some truth coming out in your end?
No, I thought I'd throw some low jabs at you, man. But, that isn't the case.
Block.
But no, I hear what you're saying. It's about moderation, isn't it? Like, it's okay to have focused attention, but actually, do it in the right way, channel it in the right way, and in moderation.
Well, for me, it's like, it's well, you get that enjoyment out of it, that buzz out of it, and it's like when you're breaking things apart, seeing how things work. It's that, oh, it works like that. Oh, this is how that works. Oh, this, like, you're talking about music, you break things up. You have the drums, your synths, your strings, all the different parts of it, how it's modularized, all these bits. When you're looking at how something is put together, it's that, how does that work? And I think that's the thing that stuck with me. How do things work? And I am, my curiosity naturally gravitates towards that mindset.
It's interesting. So that got you through, school, college, etc. And then you went to uni. So you went to UWE? University of West of England. So how was that for you?
Yeah, do you know what? UE was an interesting one. So I think we skipped kind of college sixth form as well. But, just to fast track that down to uni, GCSE, IT, loved it. Sixth form, again, IT, I was always doing IT. And then because of that love, I thought, you know what, I want to do something in IT. I didn't know what I want to do. I knew I just liked it. And it's like one of those parts in your life where you just going with the flow on what you like. And for me, I actually picked something. Because I didn't know what I wanted to pick. I picked computer science at the beginning, thinking that, I remember going down to one of the open days. Oh yeah, this looks like it. It had computer in the title. I'll just do it. Lo and behold, I did 1 year of that and absolutely hated it, and realized, oh damn, this is really much more complex than.
Yeah, and it's not creative, is it?
It's not creative, and that's what I was yearning for, that creative aspect. And then that kind of opened my eyes. Well, actually, there's so many different courses. When I was doing, so I picked computer science thinking that is one thing, and we had loads of different modules and courses, modules in that course, and yeah, it got really nitty-gritty. But what I was yearning for is, I love the visual aspect of it. Those experiences to say, oh, this is how it looks. And if you're in development, and I did development for a big chunk of my life, I absolutely hated it, because it was all the stuff in the background where you might do so many hours of work, but at the end of it, you make a line, you make a line of text appear. You're like, that's not what I want to do. And that first year of uni, in the end, I did fail it, and I was in a crossroads. I was like, oh, I don't like it, but I need to pick something that I do like. And that was the year. So after my first year of uni, I changed course to something called multimedia computing. Before that, I didn't know what it was. Diving into and learning into it, I realized that I had all the kind of the hallmarks of the stuff that I do like. Web design. It had some development, and it also had something called human-computer interaction, which was, I guess, formed a part of how things work for user interfaces for websites and web applications and stuff. And it was the best damn decision I made in my life.
It's interesting because it sounds like you nosedived into something. Naturally you thought uni's the path, right? You just thought, oh, obviously I'm going to go to uni. That was your mindset. Went to uni. I like computers. All right, I'll pick computers. Went in. Didn't work out.
Went with the flow.
Went with the flow. But it's interesting that when you reflected on it, and then you came back into this decision-making process where you're thinking, actually, well, clearly I don't like that. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't do well at it. Even though first year, I'm guessing, would you have dossed about much? Because first year uni, a lot of people kind of mess around, or were you actually a bit focused on it?
No, I was focused. Do you know what? It's almost like the uni decision process. We very casually said, hey, Bristol UE. Why Bristol UE? For me, actually didn't really think of far outside of Bristol. For me, everything was in Bristol. My bubble was Bristol, and that was kind of how we grew up, because that's all we knew. Your family was there. Why did you want to move out? And so it wasn't even a choice. So we stayed. So there was UE, there was a computer course. I went with the flow. I knew I liked it. I'd give it a go. But what was, I guess, refreshing is knowing what I don't like. And it is, if you don't like it, it's all well and good to say, but I think at that point, I had to really ask myself, why? Why did I enjoy it? Why did I enjoy it? And what part of it do I enjoy? Because I knew I like computers, but I had to really try and question myself on what is it I actually like and what do I want to do?
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because that you had the ability. It almost took you failing to. Now we in let's use corporate terminology. We fail fast and test and learn, but that would have meant nothing back then. And I could imagine the emotions that you probably went through, like the self-esteem, confidence, probably would have taken a hit. Or were you more like?
No, do you know what? That thing is, I think, so when how old was I? 18, 19, 18, whatever that time. Okay, so what was quite nice is that because the angle I was going, there was nobody like me who was that I knew of. Obviously, there must have been someone out there, but no one in my inner circle or even close to the inner circle of a family, friends, or whatever who was going down that path. So for me, like, I didn't know what good was. I didn't know what bad was. I just went with it. And we'll touch upon that in a bit as well, I guess. But like those are kind of things you kind of just keep it with and say, oh yeah, I don't like that. What are the other choices? You have to be. I had to be comfortable speaking to somebody about it, which was your tutors or even my sisters. Actually, they're like, what was quite nice is that because one of my elder sisters, she was one of the first in our family to go to uni. I talked to her and she's like, oh yeah, okay, try something else. And you ought to get that motivation. Say, you know what, Mabs, talk to someone. If you don't talk to someone, you're not gonna understand what you do like, and you just kind of gone with it. So mom and dad, they're not from an educated background, so you can have that conversation with them. They'll say, look, do what you feel is right, and have a chat to your sisters and so on. But then comparatively, even if you did speak to someone, you're like, okay, what is it you want to do? Okay, I don't really know about it. You just do what feels right.
Sounds like it didn't impact you then, you're saying?
No,
because the impression I would have had from what you said was, you would have taken a big, it would have been a big low point.
Oh, don't get me wrong. It was frustrating, but I also knew what I did like.
So you had the resilience to get over it. So that's another top tip, right? Like know what you want. If you don't know, you don't know, but fail fast and have the resilience.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you know what? It's not about not knowing and failing. It's about what you learn from that path. Do you know what I mean? And I guess when you're that age, it's hard when you're that age because you really don't, you feel like you're enclosed and you got, whatever decision you make is going to be impactful. But, it is really just going with the flow on what you feel, what feels right. Okay. If you enjoy something, like an opportunity can pass up. I think lucky for me, at that time, computers were getting big and everyone, it was almost, you very flippantly joked about, oh, you're gonna be a doctor or scientist or IT engineer. Like it was kind of within that space, so it wasn't really challenged. I guess if I went on with the whole music angle, I would have been challenged a bit more. So it kind of went away from that. But I knew what I didn't like and I knew what I did like. And to be honest, I didn't really realize how much of a big decision it was until later on, until almost halfway through the course.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you graduated in 2010, and then
whatever my LinkedIn says.
Huh?
Whatever my LinkedIn says, yes.
Yeah, whatever LinkedIn says.
Back, show my age.
So you graduated in 2010, and you got your first job, and obviously you would have kind of bounced around a little bit. So between 2011 and say 2014, you had a couple of different companies you worked for in.
No, I think you batted around. So yes, I did.
So between 2011 and 2013, right?
Yeah. So I graduated around then, but actually I was talking to somebody around there. I think it's an interesting topic to talk about is what happens when you do graduate. From the moment you graduate, from the moment you get a job.
So that's the bit I was going to touch on because there was a year of something, right?
Yeah.
What happened then?
What did I do with my time there? Interesting question. So around that time, I graduated, and alhamdulillah, I smashed the course out. I remember doing however many hours, and for anyone who's listening, and if you're doing your courses, spend that time. I remember waking up at working up until 6 a.m. in my final year of uni, and then going to sleep for 6 hours and waking up at 12 o'clock, and then doing like however many hours after that. It was militant. I just put my time to it, focused, and you got to put the hours in to get it out, and I'm there for me. But then after all of that, it was like, it's done. How do I get a job? I was struggling to get a job, like a lot of people. You don't know what you want to do. Your CV is just what you have in uni. How do you structure it? Who do you speak to? You don't have anyone who you speak to. And, I was toying. It got to the point where I was toying, okay, I don't think Bristol's for me. I very nearly moved to Reading. I was talking to somebody yesterday, actually, where an opportunity came along. But then something popped up as an intern in Bristol. So I went for this interview, and I remember around that time, what kept me going was actually the stuff I did on the side. And we didn't really touch upon this, but all between uni, I was work mentality and family mentality. The ethics of work. I always had it on me. Just doing something else. I was one of the first, I guess, Asians in in the group of circles I knew anyway, who was creating websites just on the side. I did so many restaurant websites, I lost count, and it's that what got me the job, my first job, which is I've done all this kind of personal work, really just to kind of bolster my either capability or portfolio. And back then, I actually didn't really understand what portfolio was. It's just, hey, this is stuff I've done, build up a website, and lo and behold, it's called a portfolio. But it's that curiosity of just keeping at something, and I built up this portfolio of websites that I created. Whether or not it was good or not, that's another question. But it was good enough to say, oh, you know what, this person actually can give a shot. And then I ended up working for this digital agency in Bristol called Mentor Digital.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
So you did a little side hustle.
I did a side
made
hustle.
some money on it.
Yeah.
What stopped you making that into a business?
To be brutally honest, my clientele, if you call it that way, I was focusing on Indian restaurants. And when you're doing smaller websites, it wasn't the money that drove me, it's the learning that drove me on how can I be better at the craft that I was working at. So we fast tracked a bunch of stuff, but I got heavy into UI web design. Back then, by the way, there's no such thing. UX design wasn't really a thing. It was just web design as the big thing. And I used to love it. There used to be, Photoshop, Fireworks, there's website, web design tools, Dreamweavers, the whole lot. And so for me, it was just kind of, can I make a bit of money? And how can I learn quickly so that I can get a job? And that's what drove me.
Okay, so the intention wasn't to create a business; it was just to earn a little bit of money to keep you going.
Exactly, yeah. It was learn fast, learn quickly, and I make a bit of money on the side for it. And for me, that was pocket money. What can I spend on? It was games or whatever it is. When you're young, you just pass it up. And I think around 21, I'd be I had enough where I can comfortably go in front of someone and say, yeah, I know how to do this. I'm like, I can comfortably design stuff and do stuff. And I remember going to that interview. It wasn't even a full-time job. It was a 6-week placement with no guarantee of a full-time job. But that was enough. That was enough for me. So you know what? Here's a shot in Bristol. It's close by. I was driving there, so I can drive there close by, and that was good enough for me. And that first interview, I remember it was Holland Risley. He was the MD at the time. Oh man, he liked me straight away because of the stuff that I was doing on the side.
So you got your first job. Internship that obviously turned into a job.
Literally 3 weeks into the job, you were like, Mabs, you're awesome, let's keep you in. And that blew up my eyes because I was able to do a bit of everything. Like anyone who's doing web development, UI development, front end development, digital agencies are the place to go, because you have in a very short space of time you can touch upon loads of different brands and actually do loads of different things.
Because you're just touching different industries, right?
Exactly. You're touching different industries. And I was there for, like I said, it came in as a 6-week placement, and I ended up being there for almost 3 years.
Wow. 3 years is a long time when you're fresh out of uni.
Exactly.
So you enjoyed
it,
right?
And don't get me wrong, I haggled my pay.
You learned that early days.
Okay. But in that short space of time, I was doing stuff for the NHS, we was doing stuff for Wincanton. There was a few other ones I can't remember off the top of my head of. I can't remember. It was a few good brands under my belt. Tenpin, one of the bowling companies in the UK. They got loads of, I'm doing stuff for that. And in that space, he was doing, design, web development, back end of, a lot of JavaScript. It was Razor back in the days for any devs who want to be devs out there. And it's just really getting to do so many different stuff in such a small space of time. And for me, it was just like, wow.
Was it a big company then?
It wasn't that big when we started, but it turned out to be, it was, I'd say in the grand scheme of digital agencies, they were medium sized, but they had some big names under their belt, I think even today, one of the NHS websites is still the Bristol UHP2 website is still the website that I created back then.
Wow. Wow, that was money well spent. Yeah. So then, you moved to a different company.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you move?
Money. Yeah, money's the driver. We don't work for free. We work to be paid. And by then you're realizing, oh, you know what? You can sweet talk and haggle as much as you can in terms of what you pay is, but then I wanted to try something different. And I was looking around, and I guess, that's what got me the second job. So my second job was actually at RAC, the motoring company, and I was a senior front end developer there. So I went from effectively going from a placement to a junior, fast tracked into a senior position at an agency, albeit senior is still it's kind of mid level, I guess, in agency terms. Plus, there was quite a small company. There was like 2 or 3 of us. In the end, there was like 6 developers, and for me, it was like, okay, I need to get more. But actually, why? Why did I need more money? Because at that time, apart from the work life, earlier that I said that we were we were living in Easton. I wanted to support my family on how we can move out of Easton and actually move out. And we were actually looking for homes, and mum and dad being the local business, like we couldn't, the money that we were earning was kind of the business and the finance. It wasn't enough to get mortgages. So for me, it's okay, how can I earn more with the thing that I'm doing?
Take on the responsibility of the lending, basically.
Exactly, yeah. And that was one of the drivers for one of the first steps. We didn't get to the property until later on, but that was the first step. So you say, you know what, I can actually do it. And that blew my mind because that pay bump was, oh man, back then, what was it? It was like from 22 to like 30K, and you back then you're like, oh yeah, do you know what? This is big money. I'm actually making some earnings here.
That's brilliant. So you only stayed there for about a year, right? RAC?
Yeah.
What's that culture like? So we don't need to slander anyone or anything, but
absolutely, Robert. You know what?
I haven't heard great stuff about the culture at RAC, to be honest. Is that the RAC, the big? Looks like a what do you call it? A airport,
like a command center thing.
Yeah.
It's not a command center. It's a blooming meeting room at the top. That's literally it. I got so hyped about this thing. I'm like, oh, what the hell is that in there? You go in there, it's like, oh, it's just a meeting room, and nobody wants to go in there because it sways and when it's windy. But what's the culture like? Look, I got a bit lucky in the sense because the culture. I was part of the development team there, so that was on the upper floor, and it opened my eyes to working within, rather than from an agency to a you work with everyone. You're working on one thing, so it got me thinking of away from a bit of everything and actually focus on one thing and refining it.
So you went from what you say would be like a jack of all trades, not in the sense of working on different accounts, but not really deeply, to then just working on one element and then just having narrow focus and deeper. Is that what it was?
Well, yeah, that's typical of any agencies. If people come to agencies as a way to develop solutions really quickly. But once that's done, then it's done. You might have retainers and so on, but you have lots of different websites effectively that are developed by agencies. But when you're working at a company that has in-house development team, they're working on the company's product. It might be different parts of the product, but it's still the company's product. And I went in as a senior front end. I think it was senior front end dev or something like that. Can't remember. This goes years back. But yeah, for me, I was like, oh, you know what? I got an opportunity to work again for a big brand. And for me, big brands were it because I knew that's going to be the thing that stood out on my CV. And working with the people that can create something that's actually quite well known, and you can be quite proud of it.
Yeah. There's a legacy there and all that kind of stuff. So, did you buy that house in the end? The family home?
Did we? Oh, this is. What year was it?
So that we're talking, I think you were there 20... This is your career, not mine.
I know, this is... You can cross...
2013,
cross-check my years.
2013 to 2014.
2013, 2014. So, where do we go? So, actually, the property... we were...
And this is a residential house, yeah, not an investment house.
Yeah, this is a residential house. So, what we wanted as family is, we were a big family. We were, like I said, so many sisters and myself, mum and dad. We needed a big house, but the problem was how much we can borrow and how much you can borrow versus how much you can afford. And I remember we saw, I think we easily saw around 100 houses.
Wow.
Yeah.
But that was interesting because there was a around 2014, in 2015 is where there was a massive increase in pricing, because you bought your first house in 2014?
Yeah. Was
that a resi or was that the investment?
Oh, we had to. Well, no, it was a resi. So actually, bringing it to the properties, I guess, to around your focus is there's 2 parts of it. There's one side is, hey, I remember Dad saying you should buy properties. But on the other side, we knew that we wanted to buy a house for ourselves. If you bought a house for investment, it may impact the capabilities of buying a house for ourselves because we wanted to make the most of the first time buyer thing. So the primary focus for us was for the family was how can I help buy a home for us, but also keep our house. One thing that I'm forever grateful for my dad is that he very early on did buy our own council house. It was cheap as chips back then, but even for back then, it was still a lot of money for someone of our background. I can't remember, my dad came to this country when he was 13 years old as someone else's son. He had nothing. He had his whole family, on his shoulders from the age of 13, giving back. So, by then he had his business that was doing well. It was doing okay. We had ups and downs. And he managed to buy the house. But then it was, how do we buy a house for ourselves, but also keep the house that we keep our house that we have at the moment? And that was one of the biggest challenges, because no matter which way we went, it was super challenging in front of in ways of in terms of finance. Like, how do you get that much finance? And again, Dad didn't have much income that he was able to show. It was good enough to get us by, but it wasn't enough to get good mortgage. So it was So I felt it was up to me to make that happen.
Of course, it's easier for lenders to see payslips and then lend against, because they can see it all there. But if you're a business owner, SA 302, tax calculations, computations, blah blah blah, it goes on, right? And it's a lot more.
Well, actually, it's more difficult than that, because now I'm in the know, and like you said, you just splurged out all these things I had to learn along the way. But if you don't know, people get so much anxiety out of it. Like, you get so much anxiety to the point that you actually don't do it, and that's where we were. It's like it's almost like we were afraid of doing it, or what we didn't know. And actually, I was talking to my wife earlier about this. It's like, what was the driver? It's like, bear in mind, like, this was a point in my career, in the part of my life where, and we, many of us can probably relate to this. Once you have a family, once you have your dependencies, whether it's your wife, your kids, your business, or whatever, any decision you make will have a ripple effect, whether it's positive or negative. And if it's negative, it will impact your family. I didn't understand it when I was younger, but that's exactly what my dad was doing. Why did we look at so many houses? Because forever in his mind is, whatever decision we make, how is that going to impact us 20 years down the line? Yeah. And this is from a person, again, who came to this country when he was 13-year-old, not very well educated. He did the best. What he's done with himself, with the little he had, was phenomenal. But he had really, he was really restricted because of what he knew, and that scare kind of came onto us. So I kept thinking to myself, how can I make it happen? And again, it's looking at the different ways you can actually, and learning about the different ways. And it's that you were saying about earlier, it's the obsession of something and just going into details. How could we make it happen? And it's quite interesting on how we made it happen as well.
How?
Well, the first barrier was, for back then, our budget was at max 250, which seems absolutely, ridiculous in this day and age. 250, you barely buy your one-bedroom house.
That's a big budget for that, but for back then, though.
Yeah, that's what we'd like to. But then how could we? So actually, I lie. It was around 200. It was up to 200, but we realized, actually, we couldn't get what we wanted for 200.
Because you can get back then. I just remember, because I was buying back then, 2013. You can get a nice 3-bedroom for about 150.
Yeah, but it's not just about nice.
You wanted, obviously,
so
size.
here's the challenge: when you're buying it, and you know that more than anyone, it is so easy buying it for investment. As soon as you go steer away and you want to buy for yourself, the requirement goes all the way up, and then you got this problem was, what do you want versus what you can compromise? And we, as Bengalis are well known of not compromising much with very little budget.
You got this budget, and we got this everything.
Yeah. So that's the challenge. That's probably one of the reasons why. Dad wanted something that was nearby. Mum wanted something. I wanted something. And is how do you tick so many boxes? And plus, we didn't want to be too far from the community. And even then, actually, yeah, you can buy some houses, but then the compromise was either it's too far, or you want 3 good-sized bedrooms. There's no, the reality of three good-sized bedrooms wasn't a thing. It was actually, you'd actually need 4 bedrooms, and the 4-bedroom was split in 4, but then how do we fund it? And so what happens after a lot of digging and the obsession of mine, I found a way where rather than me us buying a house. What we decided was, or what I found out what we could do was actually rather than my parents buying a house, because if they bought a house in their name, and this was one of the challenges, their mortgage period was actually shrinking, and they couldn't get it for much long, which means the monthly repayments were huge. What we did instead was I bought my parents' house for because it was freehold at the time, and then my parents bought the other house that we actually moved into. But then that brought up another challenge, which was even though I was on paper earning quite a bit for that time, enough to get like £160,000 mortgage, we wanted to buy a house that was 250. How do we fill the void? And this is something that I'll be forever grateful to my family. Me, my sisters, everyone, we all effectively pitched in and helped each other and bought and effectively put together 100 grand cash, or to support this initiative for our family. Even though my sisters weren't living there, I'm absolutely forever grateful because they enabled that capability. So what I did was buy my parents' house. My parents bought the other house, effectively full cash freehold, and that gap of being able of the difference of 100 grand was brought up of all of our siblings putting cash together, and we bought that house, and that was and that's how we made it happen.
It's amazing, the graft mentality, the willingness to help each other out to get there. So when did you buy your first investment property? Where did that come from?
Oh, that was quite a few years. That was quite a few years after. So by then we got out of Eastern, but still BS5. Don't get me wrong. And so we got out of Eastern, and a lot of the learnings, because it's almost like I turned into a landlord by default. We wanted to make this happen, and one of the outcomes was we had a property to rent. I had no idea what I was doing. I had to learn everything from scratch, all the rules, all the steps, all the processes. How do we, so that first investment property was actually quite outside of the family home that I now, by default owned.
You're an accidental landlord, basically.
Yeah, effectively an accidental landlord. But I was a young accidental landlord, and for anyone who actually knows me, I look a lot younger than I am. So you look at me and was like, who the hell is this kid who's trying to shut off this house? But it was a good 4 or 5 years after where I pluck up the courage to actually buy it. And in that time, you had to make a lot of mistakes to learn of it. I had to learn of what the short tenancy agreement. I had to learn about that, how all the rules around Section 21 and Section 8, how to even we actually went down the road of going to an agency and realized, well, the people they were getting, we wanted family, and they weren't getting the type of family we wanted. So I'm just doing all of it myself.
But that took you about a period of 4 or 5 years to get to that point where you effectively managed it all yourself.
Yeah. And so after all of that, in that period, transitioned to another job, had some more money coming in, which was fantastic.
So then you moved to, what is now Zealous?
What is now Zealous? It was called Northgate Information Systems.
It's a title, isn't it?
What a name. That was, it went through so many guys.
Then what, NGA?
Yeah.
HR?
Exactly.
Then it became Zealous.
That's right, yeah. So it was, when was it again? I think, it was a couple of years after I transitioned to a job, and then this property came up, and I was like, okay, so if I want to get another property, how? We bought the house for like 210,000 it was. Then I realized, oh crap, I needed to get effectively around 50k, 25%, 55 something k. Where the hell do I get that? How the hell do I raise that capital? Who has that kind of money lying around?
Plus stamp duty, plus legals.
Stamp duty, yeah, exactly. But then through that journey of 4 or 5 years, and then a few remortgages along the way, I've learned one of the greatest lessons I've learned is the kinds of people you need to keep close, which is a mortgage broker, an accountant, and a solicitor. And I had a really good mortgage broker, and coincidentally, it was the same guy you were using.
God. Fucking Steve.
Steve,
Sorry.
man like Steve.
Oh
Bleep,
my God.
bleep.
He is fantastic, isn't he? But he's murder.
But you
and
got to realize
he's-
this was way back.
Yeah.
This was
So
way
was that
back.
when Steve was organised?
Yeah, so Steve, so we happened to stumble upon Steve in Taylor's estate agent, and he was awesome, man. He gave us away, and then I thought, you know what? Let me give Steve a call. Let me see if I can do. And again, it's kind of coming back to this obsession mentality. I had this thing in my head. I couldn't shrug it off. I remember, sleeping thinking about it, waking up sleeping thinking about it. Amongst all the stuff that's happened at home, we won't cover it today, but like I was just obsessing over it. Like, how do I do it? How can it work? How can it work? How can I get that much cash out? And then that was when the penny dropped. When I remember having that chat to Steve, our mortgage broker, like we share him. But the mortgage broker, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you can remortgage this property out. You dump it in there." I'm like, "Wait, hold on, I could do that." Light bulb moment. It's like, it's this whole like, it's like one of those moments in your life and you like, oh snap, is that how it works? That's when the whole refinancing game kind of clicked for me. And I was like, okay, how much I then learned I over that period of 5 years, so much equity has borne up. I can take that money out of the property and dump it somewhere else and actually start buying and actually buy something of my own.
And when did you do that, Remo? Do you remember?
God knows when. This was 4 or 5 years. This was 20. I think it must be 2019, to be honest.
So you would have had so in Bristol, in that area, we said earlier they had a massive spike between 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
And it kind of tapered off of it, and then it kind of had another increase.
I think it must have been the tapering off.
But you would have benefited from that big spike because you'd bought pre the increase.
Yeah. It was definitely so. Given that we bought the house around 2014, it must have been like 4 years or so after that. And it was before that big. So yes, there was a bump, but then I didn't know anything. Like, bear in mind, like, I was, how old was I at the time? I was like 26, 27 or something. But I was obsessing more about how do I get the money out and less of what the market was. And again, it's part of the learning process. I learned about that. I know about that now more than ever.
Like obviously bull and bear market, and obviously we're just lucky. I guess you were lucky that you were in a bull market and it just took it right up.
Yeah.
I remember I made something like 80 grand on a property just by doing a 5 grand refurb on it, and it just shot up in price. So you guys would have obviously benefited massively from that, but just by buying just before the sharp increase. But do you know what the lesson here is? Like, whether it's a bull or a bear, you took action. Like, you did it.
You know what? I was about to say the same thing. Like, if we've been talking about this, is like my obsession, just digging into the details for it and actually doing something about it. And the reason why I think that was happening, because one of the things I kept saying to myself is like there was a moment where things weren't really moving. Things weren't moving. Then I said to myself, okay, how can I get things going? So I gave myself a target. I was like, okay, I need to try and do one thing every month, however big or small, but plan it and action it. That's meaningful. And just action it. And that was my goal. One thing every month. And then that turned out to be, okay, I need to look for a property. Bang. I need to speak to a mortgage broker. Bang. I need to find a solicitor. Bang. I just kept towards that. And it's that obsession that kind of got me to it and making action. And, it's, to be honest, I don't know what drives me just to do that. I just do it. But yeah, and it could just be me upbringing, family business, seeing things happen. We were talking about, or just doing something for myself, and not relying on other people's comments, like snarky comments, like, oh, because his dad does this, so he can have it. I want to make it for myself, and that's the driver for me.
So you refinanced, you got the cash lump sum. Ta-da! You got some money dropped into your account. How did that feel?
Oh man. Well, it feels great when the money comes. But the thing is, you see the money coming in, but it's almost 10 times more nerve-wracking when you send that money back out. You're like, hold on, bank out sort code 20 times over. Is it right? And like the feel, because 50 grand is even, it's a lot of money. When you see that money going out, it feels nerve-wracking. I think the first time that happened, I felt sick.
So money dropped in, money went back out.
Yep.
Yeah, it's good. That's good. You hold cash, right? Obviously inflation, etc. versus investing. So you invested that money straight away. You had a property lined up.
Well, actually, we skipped about one thing. There's something I did in between that you don't know of. Actually, I don't think we ever spoke about. So when I refinanced that property, there was a gap about 7, 8 months. And I got into cars. And I was like, okay, got to auctions, looking at cars. And I had this cash lying around my bank. I knew I wanted to do it. Like I said, the first step was to refinance this being a mortgage broker. But then it was a good 6, 7 months by the time I actually found the property that I wanted to buy. But the cash was sitting around. I was like, hell, why do I have that much cash? I'm like, why is it sitting there? I feel stupid not using it. And around that time, I bought a car from auction. I think my second car from auction. And I'm like, hold on a second, if I sold this car, I can probably make 800-900 quid out of it. And I had a big chunk of cash sitting there. I'm like, how can I make use of that money? And then I thought, you know what, I'm gonna try. And I skived out of work. I said, oh yeah, I'm having I'm gonna work from home this morning. Blah blah blah. I remember being on
Go to Mannheim auction.
Yeah, Mannheim auction. And but I made the stupidest mistake. The first car that I bought, because I had some cash in my account, I thought, yeah, you know what, cars are relatively easy to buy. What I end up buying? I freaking end up buying this was a 15-plate Mercedes E-Class in midnight blue, black edition. That car was 15 grand. And for me, I was like, oh, that car's worth 21 grand. I could sell it out. And I had the car, beautiful. Then I realized, crap, there's not that many people who actually comes out and buys from private seller of that much money. And I was bricking it. I literally just rinsed money that come from the property just because of sitting around, and I put myself another dilemma on myself. How do I shut this off? Beautiful car. It was actually an amazing car, and I did eventually sell it. Made no loss on it. I know I shouldn't be knocking, but yeah, touch wood.
What did you sell it for?
Sold it for the exactly same amount I bought it for, because I was bricking it. 50
But you
grand.
had some buying fees and stuff, right? From auction?
Yeah. So after all the buying fees and everything, whatever I spent on it, I pretty much
so you broke even.
Yeah, I broke even. But again, for me, it's like, I got the money back. I actually do something. But then I realized, you know what? I need to. I shouldn't overexpose myself. I should drop it a bit lower. So that kind of dipped me into the car business.
So you had a little dabble in buying and selling cars. So you changed your strategy. So you went for less luxury cars, because I'm guessing the Mercedes came along and you were like, ooh, Mercedes. And from the sounds of it, it was more of like obviously with the intention of investment, but it sounded like emotion was in there as well, because you're like, actually, I could afford this. I could, I've got money in the bank.
It's like what I didn't like to do, I guess, is like, I'm not the type just to sit there and just like, okay, I got my job and that's it. I like to try different things, and the access to the cars was pretty easy. I kind of over-egged it a little bit on that first car, but by then, sold the car, bought the house. But then again, I was like, okay, whoa, wicked! I got a house. I got 2 houses now. I got money coming in. Still going out, because at the end of it is you still need to declare taxes and all that stuff, which happen, and then you don't really. The reality is you're still left with some, but it's not a huge amount, because there's only a couple of houses. Or
Do you know what's really fascinating about that though? A lot of people do that in just translating that car, the mindset what you had with cars with property, because I've met a lot of people who want to buy really beautiful, high end, all that kind of stuff. And actually, you probably want, in property, you want to buy the worst house on the best street. So it ain't going to be looking pretty.
No, exactly.
But I'm just thinking, when you change the tact with cars, so did you move away from buying Mercedes and stuff to maybe more smaller cars that you can shift quicker?
Well, actually, it's the way that I did it. So the learnings that I took, I was like, okay, you know what? I got this money out of this house. And put it into that house. Ooh, maybe I could do something similar with the cars. So rather than, I thought, oh yeah, I've got a couple of properties, I thought, thinking big of myself, and yeah, this is all right. but I don't have 20 grand in my, yeah, I don't have that much money in my account to do it. So I was at, but then I was in the crossroads to myself. So I'm thinking, do I splurge and reward myself with a car, with a nice shiny car, which I was thinking for quite a long time, because I need another car because it was kind of being a bit.
So do you buy liability basically?
Yeah, do I buy a liability, or do I take a loan out, which at the time was actually relatively low interest. But then I was working out, okay, if you get a loan, you know exactly what your loan interest amount is. So in my mind, I was like, well, if I can break even the interest amount, everything else is a bonus. Do I use that as a learning opportunity? And then rather than buying a car for myself, I was like, you know what, I need to try it out. Got a loan out, and then didn't use any of my own cash. Didn't tell the bank I was doing it for that purpose. I just said I needed a loan for something. I can't remember what I said. But my point is, I use that 20 grand or whatever it was, and I just started buying cars with it.
So you use other people's money to buy.
Yeah, but again,
No,
but again, that's the whole property. You know, you use the equity that's built up in your property, and it's kind of like, I didn't really put two and two exactly together, but I kind of got the gist of it. So, okay, I could use this money from somewhere else and actually do it. And as long as I've focused and tunnel focused myself and actually cover what I need to cover, so it's almost like educated risk. Yes, everything is a risk. You know, it's all about how you massage it and control the risk as best as you can. And I learned from that, and I kind of took those learnings into the car stuff.
That's fascinating. That I knew you did some dabbling in cars. We didn't really ever talk about that.
We never actually spoke about it, and I did that for about a year, just before the pandemic.
You had some ex-colleagues that, I mean, they said, oh, because you had a fancy Range Rover, and they were like, oh, he's just traded up to buy that Range Rover. I was like, I don't think it was the case.
Man, before you joined Zealous, there was a point where I was coming into the office.
They did like you, bro, because, you know, you had the fancy car.
I couldn't care less. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm using my time and effort. You know, you're more than welcome to do it. If you don't like it, sod you. Do you know what I mean? But I wasn't like.
I was joking about it. They did like you, but you know, but what I mean is, in a you know,
I had a reputation for it. Yeah. Well, you know, and I don't know if it was. Yeah. It was
not
just
everyone is happy to see success, though. I think that's the other thing, because, like, obviously, you know, you rock up in a fancy Range. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, but that didn't happen. But that happened to way later. You know, that happened to way later. So even before that, before you joined Zealous, there was a period of like a good year. Yeah, I was rocking up to the office with like so many random cars. In the space of a year, I had like so many crappy cars, you know, Peugeot 207s, you know, Golfs. I had like 5 or 6 Golfs. I had like 4 Audi A3s.
And you could shift them really quickly. Like,
I'll
shift for a bit and then shift them.
and I had a bit of a reputation as a wheelie dealer. Do you know what I mean? They're like, oh, Mabs, you're showing dodgy cars. I'm like, no, I'm not dodgy. I'm actually doing my due diligence on the cars, you know.
Was that making you good margin on the cars? Like, what was your average that you were making per car?
I was making, at the least, I was making 200 on a car. The most I made on a car was like 1,200 quid. You know, and for me, it was all okay. By the way, at that time, it was just before, I think it was just before or after I got married. So it was like, you know, how can I make the most amount of money in the short space of time? And that just becomes an avenue for me. And I just got a buzz out of it. I'm like, oh yeah, going to the auction, you know, the way that it was a buzz. And then you just build up your confidence. But yeah, they're using that mentality.
And what did you use the money for? Obviously, you didn't blow it because you're sensible with your money.
Well, you say that, but then I did, yeah. Look, so a couple of things I think we fast track, which is, you know, I had the property under my belt, but then marriage, you know, Asian weddings are expensive. Exactly. And, but like, money management was something that I learned very quick. You know, back when we were looking to buy a house, I was absolutely, you know, penny watching my bank. I knew exactly how much I wanted to spend, so save. I knew exactly how much I have to limit myself, and I just gone with it. And you know, I learned very quickly that I had to take control of my own money and my financial health.
It's interesting because most people that I know that aren't in investing, whether it's property or just other forms of investing, they're not financially educated. The school doesn't teach them. Home doesn't teach them because their parents probably weren't taught that neither, and we're just in the cycle of it.
I challenge that. Home doesn't teach you maybe in the formal sense, but like, come on, when we grew up, yeah, if you're going out with your friends or whatnot, here you got £5, that's what you get in. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the that's the best you'll get. So you do kind of have to, having, we had hard limitations on what we could and could not spend.
There is that, but then when they see a bit of money, they go crazy, right? So let's talk about Easton, right? So I know a man that will be like, he's got his last £100, he'll buy a chain for 90 quid, and so they might have scrimped to get to that, but then he's just gone and blow it because it's like, yeah. So
yeah. Do you know what? It must have been, it's just been like the household we lived in. We were always like, don't save, don't waste money, don't waste stuff. I always grew up with that, and just because of where we are. And
this one, it's good life lessons, because that what I'm saying is that doesn't come naturally, and society actually doesn't teach us about good financial management. It's got to come from somewhere. So I think upbringing, like you said, is probably a really big thing in your core, right? So you're at Zealous, you're working your way up. You're in a dev. Is it called DevOps?
No, I was a
engineer,
senior UI developer.
Is that when you first started?
Yeah, when I first started.
Okay,
so by then, so just to round things off, I was not doing any UX back then. I was from day one, from leaving uni all the way till Zealous, and actually a few years Zealous, I was a developer. I was a UI developer. And when I was saying earlier how I didn't enjoy uni when I was doing computer science, because the stuff that I was doing was all visual stuff. For me, it was, you can spend how do you create things that are enjoyable, are visually enjoyable in the sense, and they look slick and amazing. And UI development was my way of kind of doing that.
So how was that career then? How did that go? Because in Zealous, you would have been earning good money, you'd been working your way up. What did you spend your money on? What did you invest? Did you start, obviously the car thing, you're trading up, so you're making some money on that as well. What did you, obviously, other than your wedding, you had to put a ring on it and blow some money on that. You would, but not all of it, obviously. What else did you do with your money as you worked up?
I guess, okay, so there's a few questions in that question. So there's the how do I work up in Zealous, and what do I do with my money. So look, money for me was a saving game. You have bits that you have things that you do to enjoy your life, but also knowing when to say stop. I think that was the
so moderation,
yeah. And when I have this hard and fast rule in myself, and it's kind of crept up. When I was younger, is don't let my bank account go to zero, obviously. But then it was my new zero figure was 1,000. Don't let it go below that. And then it was 3,000, and then it was 5,000, and so on. And that was, for me, was my ceiling point, is how do I not let my bank account go below that in terms of but that's after things have moved in terms of savings. So I very early learned to split my accounts, but not let my main account go under a particular amount, because zero isn't zero for me. 1,000 is zero for me, or 3,000.
So you always want to be net positive, because some people look at, banks giving them an overdraft of 500 quid. Wow, I got free money. Yeah. So what stopped you from getting into that cycle of credit cards and overdrafts and all that kind of stuff?
You know what? There was, I think.
So where I'm trying to go with is, what shaped your mindset, other than obviously family, but how you thought about money?
Yeah, let me give you,
because that's not normal.
No, bro. It's not normal. And I can tell you a really deep actually part of that. So earlier we said, we had a family business. One of my biggest motivations in life, in myself, was there was a period where at the end of our lease of my dad's business, our landlord tried to do us a one up, where he was claiming for like 30 or 40,000 pounds of repairs, or not repairs, what's it called again? He was claiming that money back off us because
in the commercial property,
in the leased property, yeah. And to the point where even though my dad did all the work, it wasn't good enough, and he took us to court to try and get the house, and so to try and get the money out. And the only way you can get the money out was to take away the property. So we had a really deep scare where we actually nearly lost our house because of that.
So there was a guarantee. You used the property, your personal residence, as a guarantee on the commercial?
It was a partnership. It wasn't a limited company, or I think it was a partnership.
So it was
my
under
dad,
his own name,
it
and
was
so
yeah.
so the other
luckily,
bit of equity would have been the house, so you'd have lost the house to pay it. Got it.
exactly. Now my dad, even with all the limited education he had, he always had this foresight and of trying to do things and learn things. I guess I kind of got that from him a little bit. Luckily, he had a deed of trust created to co-part that in my mum's name. So even if he sells the property, it would not be his, it'll be my mum's. But that very real scare of potentially losing our property was my single biggest motivation. For me is, so as we spoke about, hey, I did cars, I did property, I did work. Why? What the hell drove me? What drove me was the scare of losing our only livelihood and home. We very nearly lost our home. We very nearly lost our business. The only money income to the family. And I was only just about earning, I think when it really happened, I was still in uni. But that motivation was, I don't want to ever be in a position in my life where I'm dependent on only one sole income. That was that. So that is still the biggest motivation in my life. Never to be in that position again, because we very nearly lost everything. Not many people know that, and I'm coming out on here on letting it out raw.
Mabs exclusive.
Exclusive, yeah. But that is the single biggest motivation. Is like, how the hell do I ever? How do I never put myself and my family and anyone that's nearest dearest to me ever be in that position again? And that has been the motivation to do this, to be this relentless, obsessive, crazy freak that I am on just tunnel visioning on stuff. That was it.
It's fascinating because it does take a personality type to drive for this. So look, I have a lot of clients coming on board who have got time to build the knowledge. Sorry, don't have time to build the knowledge, but they could do, and they could do it themselves. Absolutely. But it will take them 4 years or 5 years building the contacts and all that kind of stuff. But you had the drive. Obviously, you had age on your side because you were young enough, but you had the drive to do that. And I guess the root cause of that was obviously you didn't want to be in a position where you lost everything. Yeah. And I guess you saw investment as a way out of it.
Do you know what? Like,
spreading your income.
To be totally honest with you, I didn't realize it was even investment. It was for me doing like I said, the motivation was not being ever in that position again. In my understanding, whilst I was doing it, whilst I was that age, it wasn't even, I'm investing. I'm doing something to avoid that being in that position ever again.
That's interesting.
I then learned that it was actually investing.
Yeah. But it was fear that drove you to do it.
Fear that drove me.
It's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. It was fear that drove me. And that still kind of, that still gives me that fire to just get on with stuff and do it.
So now you've got a nice portfolio of properties. We won't go into all of the details of the properties, but what does kind of next steps mean for you? What's the future mean for you? Because you're working for a global company, you've done really well. You're traveling to Hong Kong, Australia, America. Oh God, I can't even keep up, man, with your LinkedIn. But you've been going places, right?
Alhamdulillah. Do you know what? I can't. Look, there's.
I don't see you doing any work though. I just see you in like eating food, bro.
Where have you been seeing this?
I'm just trying to get you in trouble with your missus. When
she's eating with me.
But no, look, you're doing amazing in this new role, and you're going all over the world, and you're obviously building some great connections. You obviously got your portfolio that you've been building, and you've got multiple streams of income. When is enough? First question, and 2, what does the future look like?
When is enough? I think one of the things I've drive myself is, I guess, in terms of, I actually didn't realize when enough was enough. What enough was, actually, that's probably the better way of saying it. I didn't really think about what enough was until I think about 3 years ago, what I actually really wanted. Prior to that, my motivation, very openly, I motivated myself on materialistic things. I'm like, okay, if I want to get this, how do I get there? It was the cars and bits and bobs. But then as I grew older, actually, okay, you know what? What I am content with is how can I keep up the quality of life that I've worked so hard with, and getting, and what will it take what will it take? It's not how do I get there, but what will it take? And that's how I always position myself. That's my mentality and my philosophy. So what will it take to get there? And my goal is, if I can get myself up to 10, 12 properties, then I can maintain the quality of life that I've so.
So you had a number in your mind and you're going to get there, and you based it off this is the lifestyle I want, and to get this lifestyle, I need this
don't
many.
Get me wrong, this like the lifestyle, if everyone's, even now, I get all like nervous. What are you talking about? I'm just like, I'm just me.
But that's the lifestyle choice you've had
exactly.
to have that, and that's okay.
Exactly.
But you've got
what I'm content with. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, there's financial independence, there's financial freedom, and then there's abundance, right? And abundance could be anything. That could be Ferraris and yachts and blah blah blah. But we're talking about, okay, what gets you to essentially a good financial freedom amount. So you've got an idea there in terms of the number of properties and how that's going to get you. What continues to drive you? Like, what's the next steps for you, man?
Look, my drivers now are, I think right now my position, is where I've luckily, that perseverance and drive for the past, since I was like 19, 20 years old, has continued on and allowed me to be in the position I am. And I think, I've always wanted to not be that person who's not used up my time. My mentality was, you do it whilst you're young, use the time. And I think I've done okay enough that I'm there. Now my drivers are motivation are my kids. We at different points in your life, you do things where, how can you create the quality of life for yourself, for your kids, for your family, and like I said, I had to take a lot on that family responsibility in terms of being able to unlock those doors and actually do that, because there was nobody else. I'm the only boy. I always learned that. But now things have shifted. Things have shifted to say, okay, how can I build a quality of life for my family where I don't work. How can I be in a position where I don't work because I have to work? I work because I want to work, and I feel this has been the enabler for me to do that. But along the way, how can I learn different things so I'm not so even if I'm because everyone's expendable in their jobs, and I'm not left lurking, I still have these life skills that I learned. Along the way, I've learned how to manage properties. I can do that all by myself. I know how to build up a bathroom, do tiling, all that stuff. I never needed to do that. I even know how to sell cars, and I did that purely of actually the act of learning. And it's that learning experience, which is it's that drive to learn, as well as maybe making a few bucks from it, is what drives me. And now it's being able to do that, and have that backing for myself and the kids. I've spent time with my family and my kids.
It's brilliant. And can you see yourself in a position where you eventually leave your job and you live off your property and then do something with your free time? Or do you think actually you enjoy what you do and you'll continue doing that and just...
That's really interesting, because I was having an interesting conversation again, like with my wife. We talk amongst ourselves and, hey, where do we want to be? I actually opened that question, like, we need to have a conversation of where do we think we're going to be in 5 and 10 years? Because it's partnership. We have to do it together. It's not just one person doing it and that's it. And we're told, how do we get there together and how do we agree upon it? And what came out is I want to be in a position where if I think I just said to you, I want to be in a position where I don't want to work because I need to work, because I want to work. If I have enough financial money coming in effectively from the properties, then I can't see myself not working, because I actually absolutely love what I do, and the differences and experience and the different facets of product design is amazing, because there's a science behind it, and you can really get to the nitty-gritty of how people use things. But do it in my own time. If I want to go in consultancy right now, I think I've got still a fair few years. I don't really actually want to put a time on it yet. But what I do want to do is not use any time that I can do into the investment. And then that will really dictate on when I break up. And I think if I can retire when I'm 40, 45, I'm content.
Yeah. So you're in the building phase. See, what's really fascinating is if you look at like, I know you, but if I look at recommendations people make or testimonials, people talk about collaboration, creativity, delivering, right? That theme is weaved in both in your personal life. You know, you talk about you're talking to your wife, and this is how you're planning for the next 5 years. You know, you're thinking strategic, but also you've done that in your working life as well. And if I just read out some like highlights, some people are like, best manager I worked for. Obviously, you paid him a lot of money for that, but then he said there's another facet about you, which is encouraging growth, mentorship. You know, which we haven't really touched on. Look, where does that come from? This idea of helping other people and wanting to help. You know, we talked about helping the community. We've not really expanded on that yet. We will do.
Yeah.
We will do. How we're going to help the wider community. But this thirst for helping and giving back, because yes, this is kind of about building wealth, and we talked about all of those things and your corporate sector. But actually, there's a key theme there as well, right? Which is, I guess, why we get along so well is we have something in our heads where we want to give back to the community. You know, like, we've got so many alignments. You know, your sister works in the same place as my sister. You know, dads have gone through similar struggles and all that kind of stuff. So, like, where has your motivation come from to give back?
Actually, we touched upon it very briefly, and it's kind of one of those ones where it's so nuanced and so normalized that you don't realize it. Earlier, when I was saying when I was growing up and the things that I wanted to do, there wasn't really anyone like me. Anyone who were in the same similar career paths that I knew of in my circle, there would have been, but the access to that people was difficult. And I was thinking, damn, like, how much better it would have been if I knew that there was someone along those lines who I can support. And being able to share those, you know, just if you can, whether it's just, you know what, you're actually doing great, just showing appreciation, or actually supporting and mentoring someone, and giving that guidance back. If I'm able to do that and give back to the community, fantastic. I've had the pleasure of actually working with a few people, whether it's just CV support. To be frank, you actually gave that back to me, and I learned from you as well. So I'm tremendously thankful for that, because we learn from each other. But it's important that I find it really important. There's the what I want to do and what I'm actually doing. There's two different parts, but it's really important to, you know, if you know that there's someone out there who's similar, just speak to them, and vice versa back to anybody else who has that knowledge, and knowing that there is, do that back. And I think it's hugely important that we do that, and being able to just give back to, you know, getting myself out there to say, hey, you know what, there's someone out there who can actually speak of the space you're in. You know, back then we didn't even know that, you know, someone like us with our skin color who can be in a senior leadership team or whatever existed, but actually it does. And I think, you know, we have a responsibility of us, actually, if we're in a position, we should try and give that back. And that's where I feel, and that's what I feel really strongly about.
I love that. Mabs, that was a really, really insightful insight into all things Mabs Rahman, the highs, the lows, from young age to where you are now and where the future lies. It's been, for me, a tremendous honour. Real juicy
you learned
content.
a few things that you didn't know as well.
No, that's true. I need to get in that card game. But thank you so much. And like I said, hopefully if the viewers like what they've heard, we can, you know, get some more people in talking about their life stories like this as well. And hopefully people can take some really good snippets away for themselves as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.